So I recently talked about what I think are the greatest Oscar nominations ever for Best Cinematography. Now it's time to talk about the worst. Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the awards contender, Best Cinematography. I love this category. It's one of my favorites every year. But going back nearly 100 years of the Academy Awards, there have been some questionable nominations in this category. Today, I am talking about the 10 I really don't think should be there, that absolutely should have been swapped for something else. Let's begin with number 10, Earthquake. So I don't know what was going on with Best Cinematography that year. 1974, The Towering Inferno wins, which is pretty silly. Earthquake gets nominated for cinematography. There's nothing spectacular about the look to that movie. It's all pretty flat and basic, and the action scenes, especially today, look really stupid. Like sound and visual effects, maybe, I guess those can get by, but cinematography, that nomination should not have happened for 1974's Earthquake. What really pisses me off about this nomination, and even the win for The Towering Inferno, is that The Godfather Part 2 is not even nominated for cinematography that year. What the hell happened there? Why the hell is The Godfather Part 2 not nominated in cinematography? Every shot of that 3-hour plus movie is like a work of art on the screen. Every time I watch that, I am just blown away by the cinematography. Who in their right minds thought The Towering Inferno and Earthquake have better cinematography than The Godfather Part 2? Give me a frickin' break. Number 9, The Absentminded Professor. So I don't want to look like I'm hating on an early 60s Disney live-action movie. Like, that movie's perfectly fine and fun. The Absent-Minded Professor from 1961. I've seen that a few times. It's kind of a childhood favorite. You could argue, best cinematography for a Disney movie around that era is pretty unusual, so maybe this nomination is okay. But I don't know. I just cinematography for that movie? Put it in visual effects maybe, I guess. But there's nothing about the look to that movie that's really outstanding for its day, and especially now. Mary Poppins is another big Disney film around that time. Cinematography for that movie makes sense, but not The Absent-Minded Professor. That didn't need to be there. I think a much better nomination in this category for 1961 would have been The Misfits, directed by John Huston. That was famously the last film for both Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable, and the look of that film is extraordinary. It's really well done. So I would put The Misfits in there and take out The Absent-Minded Professor. Number 8, The Hindenburg. So I am currently watching all the major films that came out in 1975 on their 50th anniversary. I do that every year. So last year, I watched Earthquake and The Towering Inferno and many movies. One of the biggest head scratchers, I think, for 75 thus far is The Hindenburg, which got in at the Oscars. It won a couple things, and it is a total bore all the way through. There is nothing interesting about the story. I mean, you know what's going to happen. But this is no Titanic. There is no tension, no drama. The characters are very flat and one-dimensional. And even the action moments at the end don't look very good. So for this movie to win a couple Oscars, for it to be nominated in Best Cinematography, is absolutely insane to me, especially when that year we had Jaws. Jaws gets into Best Picture. It wins 3 technical prizes. Jaws is not nominated in Best Cinematography. I mean, from the opening scene, that memorable, iconic opening, all the way to the action at the end, the cinematography in Jaws is a class act through and through. That's not nominated in cinematography, but The Hindenburg is. There must have been some deals being made behind the scenes or something, people affiliated with The Hindenburg, because I do not understand how that even got nominated for anything at the Oscars, let alone cinematography. Number 7, Empire of Light. So don't come at me. I know we all love Roger Deakins, and most of his Oscar nominations, his wins, are amazing, right? Most of his work is incredible, but I do think there's one Oscar nomination he received very recently that did not need to happen, and that was 2022's Empire of Light, which was a terrible movie. Really bad, especially coming from Sam Mendes, having Olivia Colman in the lead. That movie just sits there. And Roger Deakins is doing what he can in the cinematography. There are some good shots in that. There are some moments that stick out. But for what purpose? Like, there's no story there to get behind. And most of that movie looks pretty basic, I would say. Deakins did not need to receive this Oscar nomination. It'd be like if he had been nominated for 2019's The Goldfinch, you know? Like, he's doing decent work, but the movie around him, it's like, no, that should not be at the Oscars. Empire of Light should not have any Oscar nominations. And Deakins said himself, after the nominations came out in early 2023, that this does not represent the best cinematography of the year. Roger Deakins said that himself. And what really puts Deakins on this list, sadly, is that 2022 had two movies that would have been all-timer cinematography Oscar nominations. The Batman. The Batman is incredible. Those action scenes in The Batman look astonishing. They have been put together in such a beautiful way. Whether there's a lot of light or a lot of darkness, The Batman looks insane. And especially because Batman Forever got into cinematography. Batman Begins. You know, some of these Batman films that didn't do very well at the Oscars, but they got into cinematography. Why is The Batman not there? It got into some other categories, so that bums me out. And Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick, I mean, the cinematography in the last 45 minutes of that movie is out of this world amazing. Both of these films missed in cinematography, so Roger Deakins could get another nomination for Empire of Light. I don't like it, guys. I don't like it. Number 6, The Formula. I had to put something from the 1980s on this list. That's not my favorite decade for cinematography, even though every year we of course have exceptions and some really beautiful cinematography in certain movies. But like, how did 1980s The Formula get in at the Oscars at all, let alone in cinematography? I watched that movie recently. It was a Razzie nominee, so I watched it for my Razzie series. And it's so dull, it's not very well acted. Marlon Brando is just kind of chewing the scenery. He very much deserved to get into the Razzies for that. But then The Formula gets in at the Oscars in this one category. It's nowhere else. It's just in cinematography. And it's like, what? Why? Give me something about the cinematography of that film that deserved an Oscar nomination. I don't see it. Thankfully, Raging Bull is also nominated for cinematography that year. I would have been really pissed if Raging Bull had missed and The Formula got in. But what about The Elephant Man? David Lynch's The Elephant Man, one of his very best films, and the black and white cinematography of that film is extraordinary. All the way through, some really good camera shots of the camera pushing in on characters, and especially at the end, like when he's drifting off to sleep, there's so many wonderful shots in The Elephant Man. That got into Best Picture, it got into Best Director. Why is that not in cinematography over The Formula? I think that one is very, very odd. Number 5, Airports. One of the biggest Oscar mysteries to me is how Airports got into Best Picture. 1970 got into the Best Picture category. Like, wow. Could we really not find one other movie released that year we thought was better than Airports? That is such a dull, stiff movie all the way through. Very long, a giant ensemble cast of pretty much one-note characters. Helen Hayes wins Best Supporting Actress, which has always baffled me. And then the movie got into cinematography at the Oscars. It was nominated in this category. Why? For what? Like, there's nothing that interesting about the look of the film, how the camera moves, when it doesn't move, all the scenes on the plane. It's like, let's give Airplane from 1980 a cinematography nomination. I think that film has better cinematography than Airport 10 years earlier. So I don't know, that one's really bizarre to me. It's like, really? Picture, I've never liked that. I think that is a stupid Oscar nomination for the ages. And then it's also in cinematography. Like what? It's so dumb. What would I have replaced it with? 5 Easy Pieces, which I think is the best film of 1970. It's not the most flashy cinematography of the year by any means, but I love the shots in that. I love how certain things look. That moment of him like on the freeway sitting up at the piano. I love all of those intimate scenes, how the camera moves, how it has this kind of loose feel to it in 5 Easy Pieces. I really adore the cinematography in that movie. That should 100% be here in this category over Airport. Ugh. Number 4, Dr. Doolittle. So another wild Oscar factoid is how well 1967's Dr. Doolittle did at the ceremony. How many nominations it got, including Best Picture, with it being a critical and financial flop that year. Nobody liked Dr. Doolittle. And then it shows up on Oscar nominations morning with a ton of nominations. It's not only in picture, it's also in art direction and film editing, in sound. It wins 2 prizes. It's also nominated for Best Cinematography of the Year. And it's like, wow, like kind of how I talked about with the Hindenburg, there were clearly some people very high up at Fox at the time of Dr. Doolittle who I don't know if they paid off anyone at the Academy, but they did something to secure those Oscar nominations. Why is Dr. Doolittle in Best Cinematography? You know, like it has color. There are things on the screen to look at. So I guess that's worthy enough for a Best Cinematography Oscar nomination, apparently. That was so dumb, that should not have happened. In the Heat of the Night wins Best Picture and Best Director that year. That is a beautifully shot film. Nothing like extraordinary, I would say, about the cinematography, but it's very well done. And so based on that movie doing as well as it did, winning picture and director and actor, of course, for Rod Steiger, I would much rather In the Heat of the Night be in cinematography over Dr. Doolittle, of course. Number 3, Simmeron. So there might come a day when I stop shitting on 1931's Simmeron. But today is not that day, because I found out in my research a few hours ago, this movie not only won Best Picture, it's one of the worst wins in that category ever. I've talked about that a lot on the channel before. I made a whole video about it many months ago. But then I just learned that Simmeron got into Best Cinematography. It's like, what? Cinematography for that movie? You know, the camera moves around tables and stuff. It follows them around, like it's not just static. Maybe that was impressive for audiences in 1931, but there is nothing exciting or fresh or anything about the cinematography in Simmeron. That movie deserved 0 Oscar nominations. It shouldn't have won Best Picture. It shouldn't be here in cinematography. And it's like, wow. We couldn't nominate Dracula for anything at the Oscars. That wonderful monster movie from Universal got 0 nominations. And it's like, how about we take out Simmeron in cinematography and at least give Dracula, starring Bela Lugosi, 1 Oscar nod in cinematography? That would have been so well deserved. That movie is so brilliant in its look. The vivid atmosphere, the way the camera moves around in that. I love everything about the cinematography in Dracula. That should be here 100% over Simmeron. Number 2, The Trial of the Chicago 7. Okay, so the Oscars for 2020 was a very weird ceremony, right? It was held in April. Not many films that we were talking about giving awards that night had even been released to theaters. So that was a weird year, a weird ceremony, of course. We all remember that. And there were some head-scratcher nominations throughout that ceremony. I won't go into all of them right now. But one of the absolute worst nominations for that year was The Trial of the Chicago 7 in cinematography. Like what? What about that movie deserved a nomination in this category? Like, put it in picture, I guess. You know, Sacha Baron Cohen, supporting actor. Fine, I guess. I didn't much care for that movie. I don't know if that's coming across here. Aaron Sorkin wrote and directed it. He got a really good ensemble cast. That one SAG Ensemble, remember that? Oh my god. But it's like, why is this movie in Best Cinematography? Like, that's just like a name check nomination. It's like, oh, there's not enough movies to include in this category this year, I guess. So the trial of the Chicago 7, it's in picture, let's just put it in cinematography. And it's like, no! The courtroom scenes are lit very dark and drab, and they don't look very good. The exterior daytime scenes are very flat, have nothing interesting about them in the cinematography. So this is one of the very worst nominations in this category ever. I almost picked it for number one, like I was close, and then I remembered one other that really pisses me off, so I was like, all right, the trial of the Chicago 7 can settle for second place, I guess. What would I replace it with? The Invisible Man, another horror film here. Scary movies don't often get into cinematography. It happens here and there. But it's pretty few and far between. I think The Invisible Man, released at the very beginning of 2020, has amazing cinematography. Innovative cinematography, how the villain comes to life when you can't even see him. There are moments at night in the rain that look incredible. The ending is beautiful to look at. The opening of her escaping that mansion, everything about the lighting, the cinematography, the look of The Invisible Man is top notch. That movie received 0 Oscar nominations. I would have loved to have seen The Invisible Man, written and directed by Leigh Whannell, get into Best Cinematography at the Oscars 100% over The Trial of the Chicago 7. No. And finally, that takes me to the number one choice. What do I think is the worst Oscar nomination ever for Best Cinematography? I had to go with a film I watched a few years ago for a podcast that was perfectly fine. The performances are decent. It wasn't very memorable, but I was shocked, you guys, when I learned this movie got a Best Cinematography Oscar nomination. My number one choice is Butterflies Are Free. This movie is basically 3 people in an apartment talking. The camera moves sometimes around the space. Oftentimes it's just locked off. This is based on a play, so it feels very claustrophobic, and you're just with these characters talking in these rooms and stuff. And Goldie Hawn is the star. This movie came out in 1972, and it was well liked enough, I guess, to get into the Oscars. It wins Best Supporting Actress for Eileen Heckart. She wins a big prize for this, and I'm okay with that. She's perfectly good in that movie. But there is nothing about the cinematography that is Oscar nomination worthy. Nothing. There was never a moment watching that where I thought, oh, that was kind of a cool shot. Or, oh, that was innovative or creative or different or anything. It's shot in a very basic way, and it gets an Oscar nomination for cinematography? What in the hell were they smoking? What the hell is that movie doing here? But what really puts Butterflies Are Free at the top of this list is that this very forgettable movie gets into cinematography. The Godfather does not. I started this video talking about The Godfather Part 2 snub in cinematography. The first Godfather from 1972, which won Best Picture of the Year, is not nominated for Best Cinematography. What the hell? What the frickin' hell? How did that happen? Gordon Willis, he shot The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. For some reason, the Academy just had it out for him. He doesn't get nominated for anything until the 80s. He is finally recognized in Best Cinematography at the Oscars for The Godfather Part 3, 1990. Imagine that. He gets nominated for the third film, but not for the first or the second. That is absolutely batshit crazy. The Godfather is one of the greatest movies ever made, and the cinematography of that film is absolutely extraordinary. Every moment, from the beginning to the end, the opening scene with Don Corleone in his office in the dark, all the way to that iconic final shot. Everything about the cinematography in The Godfather is stunning with a capital S. How did that not get into cinematography at the Oscars? That is insane. Who in their right minds in the Academy thought the cinematography in Butterflies Are Free is better than The Godfather? Come on. You need your heads examined, Academy. I'll try to calm down now. I'm going to try to calm down because like a lot of what I've talked about in this video has really frustrated me because there are some wonderful examples of cinematography in the movies that never got recognized at the Oscars, and then you have these really poor choices I've talked about all throughout this video that got into this category. It's not right. It's enraging, to be honest. There have been some really poor choices for Best Cinematography Oscar nominations throughout the decades, but my choice for the #1 worst Oscar nomination ever in this category is absolutely Butterflies Are Free, The Godfather. Come on. The Godfather should be there instead.